Here we go now. Batman scoop on the mic. Mix in the mix on the real steel. This is what I was looking for to do. Let's go. One, two. Let's go.
The Nintendo 3DS, a handheld console that's close to my heart. It was released in 2011, and I can vividly remember picking up my system when Ocarina of Time 3D was released in June that year. Despite its initial struggles, the Nintendo 3DS eventually reached the legendary status it has to this day, with a wide array of titles spanning a multitude of genres. However, those days are long gone. We can no longer look forward to new software arriving for our nifty portable device. Nintendo has obviously shifted its focus over to the Nintendo Switch, which was an inevitable reality that we had to face. Now that Nintendo has officially announced the closure of the Wii U and 3DS eShops, I thought it would be fun to take a look back at 5 of my favourite games available on both of these platforms. In this video, I will be focusing on the Nintendo 3DS, but you can look forward to a separate video on the Wii U in the near future. It's also worth mentioning that before I dive into this list, please remember that everything I talk about in this video is my own personal opinion, and additionally we won't be talking about Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask, as I am planning separate videos for those games in the future. But without further ado, let's get started with number 5.
Alexa, show me my baby.
Okay.
There she is.
Kirby has always been a series that I've expressed some level of interest in. I first encountered the Pink Puffball in Super Smash Bros. Melee, one of the first games I bought for the GameCube. He's so cute, look at that little face. Since then, I've played the majority of the games in the series, aside from Kirby 64, which I do plan to check out when it arrives on Switch Online. My favourite game in the series is Kirby's Adventure Wii, but that name may confuse you Americans as you've got the far superior title, Kirby's Return to Dreamland. That being said, one game in particular got close to surpassing Kirby's second Wii outing, Kirby Triple Deluxe. Some of you may be sitting there thinking, why hasn't he mentioned Kirby Planet Robot? And I can answer that for you now. I have not played it, Steve, alright? Kirby Triple Deluxe is what you would expect from the adorable pink hero. It's the usual 2D side-scroller with 3D elements. Apparently, I found this on the internet, it's called 2.5D. The adventure begins with Kirby having a great day in Dreamland. He goes fishing, has a wee snack, and roams the lands on his trusty Warp Star. However, during the time of rest, a giant beanstalk called the Dreamstalk appears, sending the majority of Dreamland's locations up into the sky. Kirby then finds himself in Alia, which can be found above the skies of Dreamland. Thinking that DDD might have something to do with it, Kirby charges ahead to his castle, but instead finds Taranza, a spider-like creature that kidnaps DDD, kickstarting Kirby's adventure in the lands of Alia. Triple Deluxe does an excellent job at retaining the foundations set by its predecessors, while also adding a bunch of new gameplay elements to make the adventure feel fresh. It wouldn't be a Kirby game without copy abilities, and Triple Deluxe adds 4 unique power-ups to assist Kirby in his quest. Firstly, there is the Beetle form, which allows Kirby to impale enemies with a horn. Then there's the Bow, which allows him to attack with sound waves and defend himself. The Archer, which equips Kirby with fire arrows and decoys to avoid attacks. And Circus, which allows Kirby to ride around on a giant ball and juggle flaming pins to attack enemies from a distance. However, the biggest innovation in Kirby Triple Deluxe was the addition of Hypernova Kirby, which can be activated by consuming a miracle fruit. Despite its implementation as an obvious gimmick, it's fun to watch Kirby consume everything. With Kirby in the Forgotten Land on the way next month, it's worth checking out Kirby Triple Deluxe if you're excited to play his next adventure. As someone who didn't grow up in the early era of gaming, I wasn't able to experience the majority of the NES library until I got the Nintendo Wii in 2007. This can be attributed to the Wii's Virtual Console, which was home to a magnificent collection of Nintendo's backlog. That eShop channel music was a song for the soul. My love for NES games didn't become strong because of that reason alone though. In 2014, Nintendo released a compilation game called Ultimate NES Remix, which combined NES, Remix 1 and 2, two games that were previously released for the Wii U. The best part about Ultimate NES Remix is its simplicity, as the gameplay consists of challenges that are thrown at you in short bursts. This was a perfect fit for the Nintendo 3DS, thanks to the portable nature of the system, and it would be nice to see this sort of thing again on the Switch. Ultimate NES Remix also includes the majority of Nintendo's backlog of NES games, such as The Legend of Zelda, Metroid, Kirby's Adventure, Donkey Kong, and of course, Super Mario Bros. At first, the game's challenges are simple enough, with you completing a level within a certain amount of time, avoiding damage, or by defeating a number of enemies. However, as you progress further, the challenges raise the stakes by a large margin, offering some significant reworks of classic NES titles. For instance, you could be playing Donkey Kong with the light switched off, or playing as Link in Super Mario Bros. For some reason. We can only hope that a reboot of this idea is released on the Nintendo Switch, as I've always wanted to see what a Super Nintendo remix would look like. There's nothing quite like a Pokemon game, and I'd argue that Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire can be considered one of the best games in the franchise. When I was coming up with ideas for this list, I did consider using Pokemon X and Y, but that would have been focused on how it transitioned the series into a 3D setting. So it's probably worth mentioning that I'll be doing a video on that game in the future. Nevertheless, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are easily the best mainline Pokemon games available on the Nintendo 3DS. Even though, the game has a lot of water in it, ORAS served as an excellent case study into remaking a video game. Unlike a certain recent remake, ORAS still managed to experiment with things while also acting as a faithful recreation of 2003's Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. During ORAS's lifecycle, I played a lot of competitive Pokemon with my friends on a weekly basis, until they started to let certain Pokemon complete in tournaments, and yes, I am looking at you, Primal Kyogre and Groudon. Putting all that nonsense aside, the game also boasted one of the best shiny hunting methods in the series via the Dex Nav. Essentially, this allowed you to chain a particular species of Pokemon by capturing or defeating them in battle using a search-like function. Nothing has come close to matching the simple and addictive nature of the Dex Nav, but Game Freak recently experimented with a new shiny hunting method in Pokemon Legends Arceus, which, in my opinion, is a step in the right direction. Although it's not my favourite Pokemon remake, as we have the Crowned Prince sitting right over there, ORAS was an excellent revival of one of the franchise's best generations, with a ton of fun to be had throughout the main adventure and in the post-game. This could easily be number one, but I had to give another game to the top spot. Sometimes, a video game can leave a lasting impression on you for years to come, and Kid Icarus Uprising is one of those games for me. Released early on in the console's lifecycle in 2012, Kid Icarus Uprising was a long-awaited revival of a dormant Nintendo franchise that hadn't seen much action since the Game Boy. Uprising was also helmed by the one and only Masahiro Sakurai, the god himself. Pit's first 3D adventure is an epic tale of a young angel who can't fly by himself, but is guided by the goddess Palutena in his quest to defeat Medusa. The gameplay consists of two phases, Sky and Land, with the former playing a lot like Star Fox, while the latter often feels like you're playing a hack and slash. Uprising can be an uncomfortable game to play, mostly in part to the awkward control scheme, so Nintendo decided to bundle the game with the often forgotten 3DS stand. If you're like me, you probably used it once or twice before quickly reverting back to playing the game with hardcore hand strain, because why not? There's not much else to say about the game other than it's worth every penny and should be experienced at least once. As you can probably tell, my favourite franchise is The Legend of Zelda. My username is directly inspired by the tale of the LostDeku scrub in the starting area of my all-time favourite game, The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask. If I were to include Majora's Mask here, it wouldn't be much of a surprise, but like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I wanted to discuss that game in its own unique video. For that reason, I have chosen a different Zelda game for number 1, The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds, the direct sequel to the critically acclaimed SNES game, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. This game is what I describe as charming, beautiful, and one of the best games to deliver a sense of adventure. Interestingly, A Link Between Worlds was an experiment of sorts for Breath of the Wild, as the Zelda team allowed the player to complete the game's dungeons in any order. This was absolute genius. You could rent items from Ravio to prepare your excursions to specific dungeons. For example, you could take the hookshot to traverse new areas within the overworld or even a dungeon, or rent the tornado rod to ascend to new platforms and unlock the entrance to the House of Gales. A Link Between Worlds is a must-play 3DS game, and it will always go down as one of my favourite games in its respective series. Thank you for watching this video, everyone. I had a lot of fun making this video, and you can expect a second installment focused on Wii U games sometime in the near future. If you did enjoy listening to me ramble about 3DS games, please leave a comment, like, and subscribe if you're interested in seeing more content. And now, this is a little bit of an unscripted bit, but I just want to say this is my first video uploaded to this channel, and there are some improvements I'd like to make, so if you do have any feedback, please leave a comment down below. See you next time.